they say your name like 4 million times in this movie. So if your character was named Moonbeam, would you have still taken the role?
Depends on the money.
I have to ask, how long after production wrapped did you keep that glorious hair that you have in front? That is like, it's you and Mel Gibson tied like from Lethal Weapon. Those glorious ages.
You know what's funny about that? That the hair guy on that movie was a guy named Ramsey, and he, during our movie, went to cut Mel Gibson's hair for Lethal Weapon. It's the God's honest truth.
I know it's been obviously 30-ish years, so if you can't remember everything, that's fine.
I'll make it up.
All right, that works too. I was curious about the motorcycle stuff. Was that, how much of that did you actually get to do yourself versus the stunt guys?
Well, I hadn't ridden. I mean, those other guys rode motorcycles, but there's Gary Davis was the stunt coordinator, and he was a very famous motorcycle guy. And he was really cool about the whole thing. And I said, look, man, I don't know how to drive a motorcycle, but I went up to his ranch and he did it for a while. And the funny thing, of course, was the first day, well, one of the first days that we were filming, the first night, the first time I met Kiefer, and Kiefer had ridden for years, and he told everybody that he was a great motorcycle rider. And of course, the very first day, he was showing off for some girl, this and that, and he broke his hand that very first day. That's why he wears gloves in the movie, because he was wearing a plastic cast. He broke it the very first day, so I was clearly better than him.
On the subject of Kiefer, talk about shooting the big fight scene at the end. I assume that was a lot of harnesses and uncomfortable wire work and all sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, the one thing I'll say for everybody here is that, 98% of everyone who has ever seen The Lost Boys has watched it on video cassette, and probably watched sort of beat down versions that were played 100 times. And when you see it on a big screen like that, you could really, really appreciate how beautifully it's shot. And it's very underrated for how good it looks, because it's not dated at all. And that's because it was shot by a man named Michael Chapman, who died a few years ago. But this is the guy that was the cinematographer for Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, and he was the camera operator for Jaws. So, in 1986, a teen vampire movie is not shot by someone like that. So it was very ahead of its time. And so when you talk about the effects and all that, obviously there was no CGI, so all those things were practical and camera things that we had to come up with. And yeah, that stuff with Kiefer, we were on wires and harnesses, and that stuff hadn't been done before like that. And so it was physically taxing, and at the same time they had to hide those wires and make it look like it did. And that is a testament to the special effects people, to the cinematographer, and all the great production design. But I honestly feel that when you feel that stuff, and it's not dissimilar to something like The Exorcist, where everything is done in camera as well, and they have to figure out how to do that. Your mind knows the difference between a computer-generated image and something that's happened in 24 frames. It just does. And I think that's one of the reasons that all the sort of effects in the movie itself, after all these years, still stands because of that. I think everything these days movies are made around CGI and effects as opposed to the effects, dealing with the story. So that was definitely taxing, difficult, and we just dealt with it on the fly and figured out how to do it.
Speaking of watching it on video, has anybody actually seen the movie for the first time tonight? Oh, nice. Excellent. Well, stuck around, so like I said. You got to watch it with the star of the movie, Q&A. You waited for the best possible. All those people are watching at home, and they can talk to people.
Well, you could talk to anyone at home.
My mom didn't know as much about the movie this year. It's like as much as I asked her, she just never told me about the sunset.
I told her not to say anything.
One thing about watching it on the big screen, it really dawned on me, because I haven't seen this big in a while. The house, Grandma's house is amazing. Like it's just so set designed, which is another thing you don't see a lot of anymore. There's just not a lot of that sort of like, let's make every corner of this feel alive and feel lived in. House, was that a set that they built?
That was a set. I mean, the outside was a real house, or someplace up in Santa Cruz, and then they built the set. But I mean, you're dead right. I mean, when you watch it on the big screen, there is not a space of frame that isn't perfectly done. And once again, that's because of Joel Schumacher and Michael Chapman. And that house is beautifully done and beautifully shot and shaded. And there's a lot of fluid camera moves. It's not like movies today where you have a two-shot, a close-up, a master. It's not that way at all. People are moving into things, which gets you into the fluidity of the sort of subjective sense of being in a movie. And yeah, and I noticed that today too, just how spectacular it looked. And that production designer was a man named Bo Welch, who was just phenomenal.
Yeah, you mentioned Michael Chapman, who recently passed. We also lost Richard Donner recently. Was he a producer that was kind of on set, or was he? I mean, he was making Lethal Weapon around the same time, I assume. So was he there a lot?
He showed up, and he's a big gruff guy. We're gonna make this movie. We're gonna be a big star. Blah 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 blah. He's like one of those old guys, and he made Superman in 1978. So I like talking to him about things like that. But he was great. I mean, those are the old sort of characters that don't exist anymore today because everyone's so cookie cutter and afraid to say anything. So it was nice to be able to deal with people that just wanted to make movies and said what they wanted to say. Well, Kiefer takes a lot of credit for that, but the fact was his eyes watered at that exact second from the contact lens. And they caught it, yeah.
I know you wear glasses now, so I assume
the other part of the story, Dr. Greenspoon's assistant was a guy 36 years ago named Dr. Silver, who is now my optometrist. And he's booked for 2 years, when you call him, and then I always get his assistant. I said, "Can I have his voicemail, please?" Leave a message.
So you need eye work in 2 years. Talk about working with Diane Wiest. That's an actress that we don't see a lot in the horror genre, and she's fantastic. And she's always such a warm presence, no matter what. Even in this, she's like a center of sweetness. I mean, like without all the craziness going around, and like even when you're starting to be, turned, she's just love. It's not like the angry mom. And she's obviously been. The character's been dealt a bad hand in life with divorce and everything, but her warmth just remains. I was just curious about working with her.
Well, I mean, she's a phenomenal actress, and at the time she was about to win an Oscar for Hannah and Her Sisters, and I think the movie works because at its base, at its core, aside from the supernatural and horror aspects, it's a familial thing. I think it's probably the brothers that really keep you in, but this idea, I mean, look, the way you make the supernatural work is to ignore the supernatural and find another way to just realistically be there. And look, Corey could be funny, the frogs could be crazy, Kiefer could be scary, but that character, Michael, had to base something in reality. And so you worked with the family, the brothers and this and that. And the way I played it, that blood was just like drugs or anything else that someone was addicted to and interested in and wanted to be something else. It's a story of adolescence as well. So when you had great actors like her and certainly Corey and Grandpa, Bernard Hughes, that's why the movie works, because the people are really, really, really good.
It's such a stacked cast. You really don't see, especially from the 80s, there's so many horror movies and you watch them, and it's like, you might recognize one person, maybe two, but like literally just about everybody in this movie has gone on bigger and better things and stuck around and had great careers, and it's like, yeah, man, great. And it's, I think part of it is like, this is such, it's not just a cheap vampire movie, you know what I mean? It could have been, it very easily could have been, but it's like you were talking about Michael Chapman, but like, I think that extends on both sides of the camera, that it's just A-list, A-level stuff going on everywhere that really elevates it on. There's not a lot of other movies from 1987 that are probably having, repertory screenings right now, or any other time,
No, it's become, and I just know this from certain charity things that I've done, it's become sort of immortalized, all those characters and those things have been passed down to generations. I mean, in a way, it's like the Wizard of Oz that sort of exists, because it's, well done in all those ways, and it affects a lot of people.
And they did do, they did a couple of sequels, the Frog Brothers, they've done comics and stuff like that. Have you ever kept up with any of that stuff, or do you just, the job's done, I'm moving on?
Well, I mean, that's just crap. So.
The big thing right now is what we're calling legacy sequels, where they bring original actors back for a sequel X number of years later, catch up with them, but also sort of reintroduce the story with newer. Would that be anything you would be interested in with this? Would you go back to Michael? Would you get the hair back from Michael? More importantly,
impossible. The fact is that Joel Schumacher was such a major part of the movie that it's hard to think of doing it without him. And I say that with great affection. And I mean, he's talked about it in interviews before, so I'm not saying anything people haven't heard, or maybe some of you haven't. But I was 19 at the time, and I turned the movie down about 3 or 4 times. I didn't have any money. I just didn't want to do some teen vampire movie. The script wasn't very good. I mean, everything that you see now didn't exist. That makeup had never been made before. A vampire movie had never been shot by Michael Chapman. That music, and it was just cheesy. But he convinced me after many times, and to his credit, he says it, for months trying to get me to do this. And again, I was a nobody. And he said, this is going to be something special, and this is what I want to do. And he gave everybody, as I said, as a nobody 19-year-old, I had so much input in my character. Dialogue, ideas, scenes that he was open to. And same thing with those Frog Brothers or Haim or everybody. There was so much ad-lib and so much changes that had to do with what was happening, at the time. And that's a big credit to him. And the fashion, the music, the idea, that had never happened before. That was Joel. What he did is he collected all these people, he got the best out of them and said, let's just do this. So when you talk about a legacy or reboots and all that, it's almost impossible to think about, without someone like Joel. So yeah, I could show up and, oh yeah, remember that guy who used to be in the movie who looks older? Yeah, you can do that, but it's really not that much of interest to me. And I don't like those other things that people reboot all the time either.
We've actually had you before for a screening. I was just curious, do you have a particular film of yours, that not necessarily horror, that you feel could really, which one would you love to see on the big screen again? Come down and talk about, something that maybe that didn't get maybe the recognition it deserved at the time or whatever.
That's basically my entire career. Too many of those. There's a lot of movies I did that I thought were interesting and different at the time. That for whatever reason now have a greater resonance than I did initially, and that's fine because people watch them on TV and whatever. But it's magical when you see something on the screen. So I wouldn't know what to say about that, other than the movies that I've made were made for the movies. And I wish more people would go to the movies and see that, as opposed to watching them on their watch.
Yeah, we definitely love people that come to the movie. But no, you're right, and that's why I really love doing these repertory screenings, because obviously the first time I saw this, I was 7 when it came out. I watched it at home on HBO. I didn't get to see it on the big screen until many years later. There's that guy and a couple others I think never saw it before at all. Never get to see it here. The band's Chinese, the actors playing family members. This is sort of kind of bond and be a family.
There wasn't any rehearsal, but I told Joel once he cast Corey, I said I want to spend a lot of time with him. So we did spend a lot of time with Corey, because I felt that was the backbone that would keep people into the movie, so you would believe the other fantastical elements. So, I would take him to the pier, I would play wiffle ball with him, I'd hang out with him a lot. So, you see there's a physical relationship we have that you believe they're brothers, so you don't have all this expositional bullshit that everybody has these days, sentimental garbage, letting you know that you love the person next to you. You want real behavior. And so we spent a lot of time together. And when we were filming, I was sort of like his big brother, and I kept him in line, when we were doing that.
I notice a lot in modern movies too, that there's always that like really awkward dialogue that no one ever says to each other, and even with family members, like, "You're my brother. We've known each other since I was born." It's like no one talks like this. Why can't you just like do what you guys do, where you hug you and you guys make fun of your grandpa's pot and like
right, but in the script that we had, it was all that garbage that you talked about. But you knock that stuff down because the audience doesn't see that. They want to see people that they believe know each other. We don't have to tell you, "I know you, brother," and everything else. But Joel was great with that. He let everybody do that aspect.
Do you have any questions for you guys? Yeah.
Have you been back to Santa Cruz since filming?
I have not. I've
Back
been
to
there
Santa
36 years. Yeah.
Too traumatizing.
No, I just said I've never had it. I really liked it up there. I think I got invited up for some charity thing. I didn't go, but I'd like to go back up there and see what it's like.
You should. There's a poster. Just the vibes are the same.
I think I do pretty well up there.
Yeah. I'm from the Bay, so.
Oh, all right.
Did you see Us? The Jordan Peele movie?
I didn't.
Okay. There's a scene at the beginning that takes place in Santa Cruz in 1987, and they're talking about, they're filming a vampire movie at the Carousel or something like that. It's like the weirdest Easter egg ever. I'm like, that's awesome. It's awesome. It's a good movie. Check it out. But if you don't want to go all the way up to Santa Cruz, the bridge is not too far from here. It's still there. It's up by Six Flags up in Santa Clarita. So I wouldn't recommend hanging from it, but if you want to take a picture of stuff, it's there. Pretty much looks the same. Which is weird.
I'll give it up there.
Yeah, I drove by it a couple, like 2-3 years ago because I figured it was all up there. But the bridge was nearby, and we go to Six Flags a lot, so it's like swing by that.
Stalker.
It's an iconic filming look. The first thing I ever did when I moved to LA was find Fletch's apartment, because Fletch is my favorite movie. So.
Again, stalker.
We got any more questions for you guys? Yeah, right there.
You're a great actor. I mean, what's your next film? Did you stop or?
Thank you. Yeah, I sort of
But you're
stopped.
badass, like sleepers, everything. I know you do.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, took a little break for some other things I had to deal with, but
Don't give up, man. We need you.
all right, I'll find something for you. All right?
Yeah, the guy that, Dr. Pepper.
A lot of beer.
I thought you were a great actor.
That's right. Yeah, it was, it's funny you say that though. We would run and I boxed for many years and all that stuff, but I've always approached different roles in an athletic way. I think you get in an intellectual mindset, which you have to do. You can tend to get a little indulgent and too full of yourself. So I always find what the character's sort of physicality is, and I sort of, doctor whatever my work arts are to those characters and stuff, a little bit. I always, no matter what, before I work, I'm up in the morning running or doing something just to clear your head and sort of get out of yourself and all that. And it's funny watching this now, I've forgotten how physical it was, because there's a lot of physical stuff in this, as I said, because we have to do everything actually as opposed to green screens and all that. That didn't exist back then. Unbelievable. And you see things you've never seen, and it's important. It's important. I mean, you don't go see a piece of art that's half done, so when you get that opportunity, I would suggest all of you do it.
I see Rush on acid.
I was on acid when I did it. I'm kidding, of course.
Good time for one or two more.
What was your reaction when you first seen the final film, when it was ready?
I mean, man, I was 20, so you really haven't even seen yourself that way. And you have to go back then to 87, when you were 1 year old. So, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't commentary on everything, there wasn't 1,000 reviewers that have no right to be reviewing anything, you know, so you just sit there and you're sort of shocked about what it was. And as I said, it was not a big hit when it came out. It was a decent hit. But I think that if this movie came out today, it would make $1 billion, you know, it would be bigger than Twilight, that glitter fest, you know? So, it's like anything, you know, I mean, even now, I don't really remember myself that way. But I knew that it was good, and it was interesting. I said, oh yeah, that was different. That's sort of what we tried to do.